Our first theme that we'll be covering is sin and how sin leads to consequences. We have seen sin in many works that we have gone over this semester, such as Scarface and Macbeth. First, we will look at how sin leads to consequences in Martin Scorsese's film Scarface through the character Tony Montana. Tony Montana is a Cuban refugee that comes to America to search for the American dream. Montana ends up becoming one of the biggest drug lords in Miami, who uses violence to come to power. After Montana's rise to power through drugs and violence, his drug empire ends up falling and he ends up being murdered in the final scene of the film. This is Tony Montana's consequence for his sins of drugs and violence. Sin and consequence is also present in the work Macbeth. Like Tony Montana in Scarface, the character Macbeth sins through violence as well. Macbeth has a prophecy to become king of Scotland, so in order to fulfill this prophecy, he murders King Duncan in Duncan's sleep and later has many other characters murdered and killed in order to keep his position as King of Scotland. With Macbeth's sin of murders, he eventually reaches his final consequence of being beheaded by Macduff during the final battle. In Scarface and in Macbeth, both of the protagonists sin because they are power-hungry and greedy. This greed for power is seen in both Montana and Macbeth, and is what eventually leads to the ultimate consequence of death for both of these characters.
The consequences of sin in Scarface and Macbeth were clearly a repetitive theme. However, the idea of a deceptive and manipulative marriage can be noted in other works such as Rebecca, Matchpoint, and Gone Girl. All of these stories, marriages were not ideal marriages propelled by love and desire to be with one another. For example, Nick and Amy in Gone Girl hated each other, and Amy even manipulated the media, their friends, and her family to make it seem like they had a healthy marriage in order to frame Nick in the killing of Amazing Amy. In the British classic movie Matchpoint, Chris and Chloe were in love until Chris met Nola. Soon after Chris and Chloe's marriage, the dynamic lost their lust, and Chris constantly deceived his wife to go have an affair with Nola. In the novel Rebecca, the same instinctive unfaithfulness occurred. Rebecca, who used to be Maxim de Winter's wife, drove him to the point of killing her because of her unfaithfulness and deception. However, all their house guests were under the impression of a lively and vibrant marriage based on their demeanors at parties and outings. In reality, Rebecca cheated on Maxim without remorse with numerous men. A deceptive marriage seems to be a major driving force in many of these books and movies. Without this dynamic, there would be little character development. However, faithfulness to their husbands or wives do not seem to be a priority for Amy, Chris, or Rebecca. Not to mention, Tony Montana and Macbeth cannot resist the temptation for power and will do anything to achieve it, even if that means killing those that stand in their way.